But the Bible makes a clear distinction between the spiritual aspect of us and that as well. Go to the book of Ecclesiastes, if you don't mind. Ecclesiastes. And this idea is kind of tossed around throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes can be a very depressing book if you're not careful, so be careful when you read it. But Ecclesiastes, if you understand what it is actually a very, encouraging book to me. When I read the book of Ecclesiastes, if you're not careful, like I said, it can be discouraging because it sounds like the author's in some form of despair, at frustration at the way he thought the world was. But it saves you a lot of time, really, and the reason it's encouraging to me is to really get down to the truth of it all. And not having to sift through these problems myself and reading and seeing what he comes to his answer. And at the end of the book, he kind of gives a really good conclusion. The end of the matter is this, serve God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. That's pretty simple. And so if you ever want to know the meaning of life, open up the book of Ecclesiastes, do a good study, but be careful what you wish for. It may not be what you're wanting. All right, so in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, this is the famous chapter that a lot of times also is quoted at funerals, a time to live, a time to die, and all that jazz, right? But we're going to skip past that, and I want us to go over to verse about 19 or so. It says, "For what happens to the sons of men also happens to the animals. One thing befalls them. As one dies, so dies the other. Surely all have one breath. Man has no advantage over the animals, for all is vanity. All go to one place, all are dust, and all return to dust." And that sounds pretty terrible, doesn't it? Except look at verse 21 with me. "Who knows the spirit of the sons of men, which goes upward, and the spirit of the animal, which goes down to the earth?" Now, you might gloss over that, but does that not tell you something pretty interesting? Our spirit's different, isn't it? It's different. There's a different quality to it. It goes to a different place, all right? So let's look a little bit later in verse 12, or chapter 12. Skip over to chapter 12, just a few more pages. And this is the end of the book, and this is where it really gets good, but you've got to make it through the whole book to really enjoy this to its fullest, I think, because Ecclesiastes is a book of poetry. All right? There's a reason it's stuck smack dab in the middle in between, other books like, Psalms and Proverbs and the Song of Solomon and Job, and it's because it's in that category. Let's look at verse 1 of Ecclesiastes chapter 12. It says, "Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth." Another way to look at God, when we're looking back at Genesis 2. "Before the difficult days come and the years draw near, when you say, 'I have no pleasure in them.' While the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are not darkened and the clouds do not return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men bow down." By the way, this is poetry for your mind and your back and all these things. You're bowing down, right? And the house tremble and the strong men bow down. When the grinders cease, your teeth fall out, right? Because they are few, and and those that look through windows grow dim. Your eyesight is fading. When the doors are shut in the streets and the sound of grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of the music are brought low. Also they are afraid of height, and terrors in the way. When the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper is a burden, and desire fails, and man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. Verse 7 is the key. Then dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. There's something different about us and our creation. And all that stems to what we see here in Genesis chapter 2. What you're going to see throughout the entirety of Scripture, no matter what subject you're talking about, when they refer back to Genesis chapter 2, you're going to see man